you.
Got that, thank you.
Well, if there's something I can do, you need only ask me.
It was some 15 years since I'd worked in Ireland. The previous films I'd done there were In the Name of the Father, The Boxer, Some Other Son, all films set against the backdrop of the Troubles in Northern Ireland and the Troubles in Belfast. And it's my hometown, it's where I was born, grew up during the Troubles before I left for the United States. So I wanted to come back and do a film that was set now that the war is over, after the Troubles, and that would be the subtext of the film. It would be Belfast seen in a new light. The hinge pin of the story is of an American who's hiding out in Belfast, Joe Maguire, played by Brendan Fraser, and what happens to him in the course of 2 days. So it was important for me to show people on screen that the place had changed, that the police force had changed, that the attitudes of the peoples had changed somewhat, and yet that they still maintained the humour and the irony and the wit that I think they're quite famous for and that are very prevalent for anybody who's been to Belfast. So that was the backdrop, and the whole impetus for me was to get back home and try to work in Northern Ireland without the Troubles being specifically the driving force in the story.
Originally it was a darker script. It was actually quite a formidable hostage picture, which was rewritten by Terry George. Terry has absolutely turned it around into 180 degrees into the movie. The tale that it is right now is one, it's about understanding, it's about fathers and sons, it's about reunification. Yes, it's a comedy, but it's played out as a formidable hostage crisis itself. For my part, I'm working with Marty McCann and Yaya DaCosta, a little bit of Cole Meany, and I meet up with David O'Hara. We're in a little antique store that has been turned into the epicenter of this crisis because of a huge misunderstanding and a convergence of mishaps after a fish store gets robbed by Marty's character, who is quite desperate because he's trying to save his life and that he's trying to do what's best for his family. And he also has a secret, which is that his father, or so he believes to be, is the man who is now the American, the Yank, that'd be me, who's holed up in Maguire's antique store. Everything happens all at once. Now, it's a huge blend of ideas and stories and all put together. It's all masterfully directed and overseen by a world-class director and writer, and that is Terry George.
I had worked previously with Spike Lee on a film called Inside Man, and for many years and decades I'd been a big admirer of, and then ultimately a friend of Sidney Lumet, who directed the quintessential siege story in Dog Day Afternoon. So Dog Day Afternoon became the prototype, and it's certainly an homage to Sidney Lumet, and I wanted to take the basis of that story, a siege story where people are trapped inside a building surrounded by police, and the characters aren't quite sure what's going on outside, and the police outside are certainly not sure what's going on inside, and hopefully let that lead to a lot of comedy.
Hello?
What happened, Maguire?
I was angry.
Angry at what?
Me?
You're angry at yourself. Hello?
Not you, the cops! You're angry at the cops!
It was important to find an actor who could play that depth of comedy and dramatic acting, and we were lucky to have Brendan Fraser read the script and enjoy it and become committed to it. So we had an American actor who could bring that level of wit and humour and to the story, and along the way in the story he falls for a young Ethiopian refugee called Sophie, who's played by Yaya DaCosta, an extremely talented and incredibly beautiful woman. She's working in a charity store across from the Maguire's antique shop. And the idea behind Yaya's character, Sophie, was to show, she's a refugee from the wars in Ethiopia, to show that not just Northern Ireland and Ireland, but Europe has become a very multicultural continent, and the world has changed dramatically from how we perceive Ireland.
Well, this role for me is something that is very different from anything I've ever done. I mean, obviously working with Terry George any day is quite the opportunity. And the script itself is really, really great. When I read it, I thought, oh, interesting, tense, funny, but I didn't realize just how funny it was until I got here at the first table read and heard all the lines said aloud in their Northern Ireland accents. There's a sense of humor here in Northern Ireland that I really, really appreciate, and I think it really makes the film.
I've wanted to work with Terry George for about 20 years. I've known him for a very long time, and we'd bump into each other in the strangest places, and very rarely in Ireland actually, usually at airports or in Los Angeles or something like that. And we'd always have a chat and say, we've got to do something together, and we never have. And I thought it was one of those things that, you know, never would happen. So I was particularly pleased to get Terry's script and read it and love it so much, you know. So far he's behaved himself, yes. I'm waiting for the outbursts, you know, which I've heard about. No, Terry's great. His work has been phenomenal, and he's so enthusiastic about it. You know, it's wonderful to see a guy who's been doing it for a long time and done amazing work and had great recognition, still with the level of enthusiasm he has for it. He's like a kid in a candy shop, you know, and he's kind of, and it's infectious. That it's you really want to do well for him, you know.
The others in the cast, we had Colin Meaney, who's one of the best actors in the world, and certainly a bedrock of the acting establishment in Ireland. He plays Inspector Weller, a seasoned member of the Northern Ireland Police who's progressed from the old RUC, the Royal Ulster Constabulary, into the new PSNI. He's having a little bit of trouble with the transition because he's a sort of very strong icon of the Northern Ireland Police, the type of strong-willed, experienced veteran that you find in the Northern Ireland Police now.
He's a wonderful blusterer, but he's also a very good detective. And what's great about him is that you see him doing his detective stuff, but you also see him in a kind of domestic situation, which informs the character very strongly in the film. He's married. He's got a son who is also a policeman, but his son is a uniformed policeman and very much into community work and all that, which for Detective Weller it's like social work. You're not a social worker, you're a policeman, you know. So there's this great clash of like different attitudes towards policing, and a generational clash and a personality clash and all that sort of. So that's going on at the same time as you see him in this sort of siege situation.
Who's the OSC?
OSC?
On-site commander?
What, that's me. And you are?
Captain Thomas Farnsworth, SAS.
And what are you doing here, Captain Farnsworth, SAS?
I didn't catch your name or position.
I'm Detective Inspector Weller. I'm standing in front of you. What are you doing here?
We're here to assist.
Nobody requested the SAS.
We have direct orders from the Ministry of Defense.
The war here is over. Did nobody tell you? Those days are gone. But I know what this is about. Yous are bored, aren't yous?
Excuse me?
You're stuck in your barracks, nothing to do. You get the smell of action, here you are. Well, you can fuck off back to Kabul or Baghdad or wherever you came from. There's nothing for you here.
Very well. I'll pass your message to the Home Secretary.
I don't care if you inform the Queen herself. There's nothing for you here. Now get back in that van of yours and clear off. I have work to do.
I managed to recruit a wonderfully talented young actor called Martin McCann, who plays the part of Jimbo Regan, who's the catalyst and the chief victim in the story. He's a young man who's down on his luck. He's in the debt of the local gangster, a guy called Douglas Mad Dog Flynn, played by David O'Hara. And over the course of of a weekend, out of desperation, he becomes involved in a robbery and ultimately a siege. Martin McCann, I had seen some of his work previously when he was in Killing Bono and in The Pacific, the big HBO series, and he's just an incredible talent. He was able to pull off that bridge between playing a local character with a strong accent and yet have the sort of persona of an actor who I think can play universally, whose character can play in America or in Asia. He's very, very talented, and I think he'd go a long way.
It is the story, well, from my perspective, or Jimbo's perspective, of a young man that gets in too deep. So he sort of has a gambling addiction, and he has a young partner, and his young son Sean. And because of his gambling addiction, he gets into trouble. He owes debts, and he's indebted to Mad Dog Flynn, who's the sort of, the bad guy of the movie. And then he finds himself running from the cops, and he stumbles into an antique store, and he's confronted by the character McGuire, who he suspects is his father, because him and his mother were involved in each other years ago, many years ago, about 20 years ago in New York. And he believes that McGuire is denying the fact that he's his father, and while he's got the baby and McGuire and the cops outside, he kind of goes haywire and tries to kill himself, and then he kind of settles down and slowly but surely gets everything together and comes out of the antique store, and they live happily ever after.
The actor David O'Hara I've worked with over 20 years now. He was in Some Other Son, the first film I directed. He was in a TV show called The District, which I was the creator and showrunner on. He was in Hotel Rwanda, so clearly he's one of my favourite actors to work with. Incredibly talented, and is able to bring, even though he's a lovely guy, can bring great menace to the screen. He, as I say, is the chief villain. Jimbo Kelly is in his debt, owes him a considerable amount of money, and Mad Dog makes an outrageous demand, sort of take off on the Merchant of Venice pound of flesh demand that Jimbo come up with in the course of 2 days, and this is what leads to the fish market robbery and the siege and all the events that follow afterwards.
We play bad guys in the movie, but we actually really got on pretty well.
Basically, essentially, I'm the kind of the bad guy in it. I don't know why that happens, but I always seem to get those roles. But there's a young kid who owes me money. Basically, I'm a money lender, stroke gangster. One of his really sharp friends, decides that the fish market would be the best place on a Friday to do a bank job in order to pay me money. And not realizing, of course, that the fish market is actually run by my mother.
This is a robbery. Put your hands up. Who the fuck are you? What are you doing here? They know you. Move! Get behind the desk! Quickly! Okay, right.
I'd read the project, I think a couple of years ago, because I think we were going to go the year before. Because I read a lot of Terry's work because we've worked together for going on 20 years now. But I did read it, and it was completely unusual because most of his stuff is, again, quite historical, based on fact. And this was just very, very unusual. So at first when I read it, I went, oh my God, this is weird. This isn't Terry. And then I thought, well, actually, this is Terry. This is the funny side of Terry.
C marker.
It's one of those rare scripts that it's sort of seamless. It's very, very funny, but it's about a subject that shouldn't be funny. It's like it's a sort of a siege situation, and hostages are being held. But because of the nature of the characters, who they are and the way they behave and all that, it just becomes hysterically funny. Which, as I say, shouldn't be the case, because there are guns involved with things and sort of SWAT teams and all that sort of stuff going on. But you just can't help laughing at it.
What was it about the script that appealed to me? To be honest, the comedy. I like the comedy, but I also like the sort of the stakes, the seriousness of it. These were ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances, so the script wasn't really trying to pull the comedy out of you. It was merely putting these people in extraordinary circumstances, and that was where the comedy lay. The comedy was in the reality, and I like that about the script. A lot of comedy scripts you get through, and it's like, here's a joke, laugh now, but this was different.
I will not pretend to be a connoisseur in the genre of gangster heist films. But I can say that this one in particular seems to really be about relationships, about people wanting to belong, you know? I think Jimbo wants to belong to a more complete sense of family, you know, that includes a father figure that he's just heard about all his life. Randy wants to belong to, you know, what his father represents, but then everything that his father, that's against that at the same time, and he wants to find himself. Sophie, my character, is trying to, I think, find a home and belong here in Belfast, which is a new place, but is starting to feel more like home than my actual home. So yeah, it's a real people story. There are a lot of stories in there all together within the melting pot, with, you know, kind of thrown at us in the midst of all the action.
I'm on the picture in capacity really as an actor. I know that I've also been signed on as an executive producer, and that's a mercurial title, and really what I can only say is that means that I have the privilege of feeling like I get the access to a world-class filmmaker like Terry. I can't think of being able to grow as a professional were I not a part of the team in that way.
The casting process is always very important for financing a movie, for closing the finance on a film. The story calls for an American leading character, so we knew that our search would take us to the States. Brendan Fraser, who plays Joe Maguire, was a very easy choice for Terry and I in a way. He was really well suited to the part. We started talking to him in the early part of the year. Terry met him and they got on and came on board, which was, I guess, the jumping off point for the film. I mean, that's when it really started to get momentum in the financing sense.
Answer that.
What? No! We're busy.
Very good. Watching dinner.
Well, our set is minimal. We're really working stripped down back to basics, honestly. If this was a theatrical production, this would be I'll say this carefully, this would be the equivalent of like a student black box production. I mean, this is our set right now. The guys over there, they're shooting a baby pickups of it. There's a baby in the movie too, by the way, who's an integral character and prop. We've just blown this up. This has all been exploded because our bad guy, Mad Dog, fires a rocket-propelled grenade because he's a mad dog, and tries to destroy some evidence that'll bring him down. Anyway, that's a cool plot point. Let's see, it feels very refreshing to me to be a part of this. I've come of age in filmmaking where it went from special effects were the reason to go to a movie, then they became the standard, then the norm, then they became blasé. What's next, what's next, what's next? Well, the answer is we've got to go back to storytelling. We've got to go back and care about the people who were there. And that's what this picture does. You know, you can see as much pyrotechnics and fireworks and special effects, et cetera, and eye candy. But if you don't care about what is going on in the world of the story, there's really no reason to go. And you know, ideally, if you fuse both of those like big elements, and those are the so-called Hollywood movies. Hey, I love them. Everybody does. In this case, this is not that. We're working with what we have available, and it has a feeling of a craftsmanship quality to it for that, using pretty much like found objects. And that's important. It's humble. It's like an antique store. We're finding all the treasures.
But you just never know. I mean, the reality is, you throw something at the wall and you see what sticks. And here's hoping, because you never know what anything is going to be. You can throw £100 million at a movie, and it'll be the biggest load of rubbish you could ever imagine. So, and then you can throw $500,000 at a movie, and it can be fantastic. But people have to work very hard in order to make that happen. A lot of people make compromises. A lot of people are taking wage cuts in order to work on certain projects like this. So just here's hoping. I mean, that's at the end of the day, here's hoping that it's a fun and enjoyable experience, for people.
This film was quite a departure for me because I've done Hotel Rwanda, In the Name of the Father, Some Mother's Son, Reservation Road, films that would hardly be considered light entertainment. So it was great to come and do a comedy. I enjoyed writing it. I most enjoyed working with the actors and just finding the humour and tapping into the wealth of humour that I believe people from Belfast have. That for me was a joy in itself, and it's great to work in your hometown, and particularly in Belfast, because you don't get cut any slack. It's not like they're into any sort of adoration or whatever. You better be on your game, because they expect you to produce the goods, and they're very down to earth. And I hope that sort of the warmth of the people and their humour, their generosity comes across in the film. I think it does.
Terry knows what he wants and he knows how to get it as a director, and he's fun, you know. I mean, if you're on set, you know, you can have a laugh and joke around with him, but as long as it doesn't get in the way of getting the day done. Terry's a lovely director, and you can tell from the atmosphere on set that it's been one of the most relaxed shoots I've ever been on, and he's passionate about the script, and he's passionate about where he's from, and he's, I think, nostalgic about where he's from as well, very nostalgic. Him being, you know, having moved away years ago.
It's very personal, and the stories that we're telling relate to the life that everyone has seen. This is Belfast with fresh eyes through the prism of a new lens.